So here we've got another example of a function we're going to look like. Before we get to that, I just kind of mentioned the main is a function. It's executed first. We don't have to specify a return value. It doesn't take parameters, but you could, if you felt like it, you can actually run the main program and pass arguments to it. That's more common in other programming languages. C++, not so much, but just for your information, that's a thing. You can actually have main programs and you have to pass arguments to them. So here's what we're going to do next. This is decidedly shorter than the previous one. Let's look at this program. Here we're going to look through a vector that's just going to be a whole list of numbers. And what we're going to do is find the biggest number that's in the vector. So here's what we got. So we're going to include vector this time. We always want the IO stream. We're going to include the vector in the name. We're going to use the namespace. So let's check out this function that we have here. So we've got an integer. That's going to be the kind of thing it returns. And then the name of this function is find largest. What goes into this function is a vector. That's the type. It's just like int or float or char or string. Vectors, you do have to also specify what kind of things go. That is not what I wanted to do. You also have to specify what kinds of things the vector will hold. So you can do vectors of floats. This is going to be a vector of ints. It's going to be a vector of integers. We need to name the vector. We'll just call it v for vector. All right, here's the body of the function. What's it going to do? Well, we're going to create an int, and we're going to call it largest. We're going to initialize it as just v0. So we're just going to sort of assume by default that maybe the first number is the biggest one. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make this for loop right here. So we know how big the vector is. It's going to be as big as whatever v dot size is. So in this case, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in this case, the number of integers in the vector I'm giving it is 5. So it's going to go up until I less than 5. If it was a longer vector, it would change. But for what I'm going to send it, it's going to be 5. And we're going to increment like we always do with our for loop here. And then here's the condition that it's going to check. What we're going to do is we're going to say if this is true. So if vi is bigger than largest, which I initially said was 0. So it's going to look at like, I'm starting here at v1. So if v1 is bigger than v0, we're going to reset. This is the condition. And then what it's going to do is we're going to reset largest and say that that's equal to v1 this time. And then it's going to keep repeating this. So it's going to say, all right, the largest is 12. And then it's going to look at the next one and be like, okay, is 35 bigger than 12? Well, yes, it is. So what that means is we're now going to call largest v1, which is 35. And then it's going to look at the next one and be like, okay, is 21 bigger than that? No. Is 10 bigger than that? No. Is 18 bigger than that? No. And so that means that it'll stay as 35. It's going to return whatever the largest is after we go through all this. And then here we're going to say int main. We've got a vector of ints again. We're going to call this test data. The vector is going to contain this list of numbers. We're going to create another int called large1. And we're going to use this to store the output, the return value of the function. So this integer large1, that's going to be equal to whatever find largest of test data is. So here's the function being executed. This is what's being passed to the function, which is this vector of test data. So it's basically taking this list of numbers and sticking it in the function right there. And when we're all done, we're going to output large one, and it will tell us what the biggest number was. And so the biggest one is 35. And then like you could do something like this. You know, I could put like 49 right here and then run it again. When it first goes, it's going to reassign to 35. It'll skip 21, skip 10. When it gets to 49, it's going to reassign 49 that. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. This would be I4, or V4, I should say. So V4 is going to take the value of largest. And then this time it's going to output 49 for us. So that's a function that's going to take a vector and find the biggest number in the vector.